Hello everyone, and welcome to my new channel. If you're a fan of action-packed adventures, overpowered protagonists, legendary weapons, and epic fantasy worlds, then you're in the right place. Today's story begins with a mystery. A mystery that countless guilds, rankers, and kingdoms have tried to solve for years. The mystery of a blacksmith whose name alone could shake the entire continent. And yet, nobody knew where he was. The evening tavern was unusually lively. Adventurers filled the room with laughter and drunken boasts while mugs collided and coins changed hands. But at a small table near the corner, a very different conversation was taking place. A young knight leaned forward. The excitement in his eyes was impossible to hide. After making sure nobody nearby was listening, he lowered his voice. "Have you heard the rumor about the legendary blacksmith?" Across from him sat a muscular adventurer. He raised an eyebrow. "Legendary blacksmith? What's that about?" The knight smiled. Clearly, he had been waiting for someone to ask. "They say there's a blacksmith unlike any other." His voice grew quieter. "A man capable of creating unique and legendary-grade equipment." The adventurer's eyes widened. Even among powerful kingdoms, legendary equipment was almost impossible to obtain. Such items could completely change a player's destiny. The knight continued. "Not only does he create them, he sells them." The adventurer nearly spat out his drink. "Seriously?" The knight nodded. According to the rumors, this mysterious craftsman possessed skills that surpassed the imagination of ordinary blacksmiths. Weapons, armor, accessories. Everything he created was extraordinary. And because of that, countless people searched for him. Yet none succeeded. The adventurer leaned back and laughed. "Sounds like a greedy old man." The knight shook his head. "It's not that simple." His expression became serious. Everyone knows high-grade equipment requires high-grade materials. And obtaining those materials means dealing with powerful rankers in major guilds. The adventurer nodded. That was common knowledge. Rare materials came from dangerous locations. Ancient ruins, dragon nests, boss monsters. Places that ordinary people could never enter. Yet the knight's next words made him pause. Nobody knows who's supporting him. What? No guild. No kingdom. No famous ranker. No powerful sponsor. The adventurer frowned. That shouldn't have been possible. Without backing, no blacksmith could continuously acquire materials capable of producing legendary equipment. Yet somehow, this man did exactly that. The knight took another drink. Then quietly added. And the only people who ever knew where he was were members of the Tzedakah Guild. The atmosphere around the table immediately changed. The Tzedakah Guild was famous. Or rather, it used to be. Because the guild no longer existed. It had completely disbanded. Every clue, every lead, every connection, gone. And with the guild's disappearance, the whereabouts of the legendary blacksmith became an even greater mystery. The adventurer stared into his drink. "What's up with that?" The knight shrugged. "Who knows?" No one knew where the blacksmith lived. No one knew what he looked like. No one knew what motivated him. The only thing everyone agreed on was this. He existed. And somewhere in the world, he was still creating equipment capable of changing history. Far away from the tavern, under a vast moonlit sky, a completely different story was unfolding. The peaceful night was shattered by the sounds of battle. Hundreds of hunters had gathered. Elite warriors, rankers, experienced adventurers, all pursuing the same objective. A massive monster hunt. The battlefield trembled beneath the advance of countless creatures. Red eyes glowed throughout the darkness. Monsters poured across the landscape like a living ocean. Some carried massive claws. Others possessed fangs capable of tearing steel apart. And leading them all was a terrifying dragon-like creature whose enormous body towered above everything else. Its mere presence radiated danger. The hunters immediately understood. This wasn't an ordinary battle. This was a fight for survival. Explosions illuminated the night. Steel clashed against claws. Magic lit up the battlefield. The hunt had begun. One warrior desperately pushed through the crowd. His face was full of frustration. Shit! Those bastards started the hunt without me. The man sprinted toward the battlefield as fast as possible. But before anyone could pay attention to him, something happened. Something nobody expected. High above the battlefield, the darkness shifted. At first, it looked like an ordinary shadow. Then the shadow moved. A lone figure emerged from the night. With a single leap, he shot into the sky. The bright moon behind him created a breathtaking silhouette. For a brief moment, the entire battlefield seemed to freeze. The monsters. The hunters. Even the wind. Everything faded into the background. Only the mysterious figure remained. His cloak fluttered violently in the air. The moonlight outlined his body. He looked less like a hunter, and more like a ruler descending from the heavens. A strange pressure spread across the battlefield. Not because he was doing anything, but because of how calm he looked. The confidence radiating from him was overwhelming. As though none of the monsters below posed any threat whatsoever. As the figure descended, the shadows covering his face slowly disappeared. His features came into view. Sharp eyes. A calm expression. No fear. No excitement. No tension. While everyone else was risking their lives, he looked almost bored. His gaze swept across the battlefield. Not with concern, but with quiet confidence. The confidence of someone who knew he stood above everyone present. The hunters felt it immediately. Without saying a single word. This man had stolen the spotlight from the entire battlefield. And none of them realized that the legend they had been discussing only hours earlier was standing right before them. The true story was only beginning. The mysterious man's arrival changed everything. While hunters struggled against the endless tide of monsters, he simply stood beneath the moonlight and observed. The battlefield that had seemed chaotic moments ago now felt insignificant. The monsters continued their advance. Thousands of crimson eyes glowed in the darkness. Their roars shook the earth. Yet the stranger remained completely calm. Not a trace of fear appeared on his face. Instead, a faint smile slowly formed. The kind of smile a predator wears when finally spotting its prey. Then he moved. Without warning, he launched himself into the sky. The ground beneath him exploded. A powerful shockwave rippled across the battlefield. Hunters shielded their eyes. Monsters froze. The figure shot upward like a meteor before tilting forward. His gaze locked onto the monster horde below. And then he descended. Straight toward the heart of the battlefield. To the hunters watching below, it looked as though a star was falling from the heavens. A star carrying destruction. The monsters sensed it. Several instinctively looked upward. But by the time they reacted, it was already too late. The stranger landed in the middle of the horde. Dust erupted around him. Monsters surrounded him from every direction. Yet he didn't seem concerned. Instead, he slowly reached for his weapon. The blade slid from its sheath. A brilliant light burst from the sword. Silver radiance illuminated the battlefield. The monsters hesitated. Even the hunters watching from afar felt their hearts skip a beat. The sword itself radiated an overwhelming presence. The man lowered his stance. The glowing blade hummed softly. Power gathered around him. The air trembled. The ground cracked. Then he struck. A single downward slash. The attack split the battlefield apart. The earth shattered. Massive cracks raced across the landscape. Monsters vanished instantly. Hundreds died. Then thousands. The seemingly endless army was cut apart by a single attack. Silence followed. An impossible silence. The hunters stared in disbelief. That wasn't an ordinary skill. That wasn't normal swordsmanship. It was a catastrophe. A natural disaster disguised as a swordsman. As dust settled across the battlefield, only one question remained. Who was he? But before the answer could be revealed, The story shifted. Far away from the battlefield. Far away from civilization. A cold wind swept across a barren landscape. Countless swords stretched to the horizon. Ancient swords. Broken swords. Forgotten swords. Weapons buried in the earth like gravestones. It was a valley where countless blades had come to rest. A graveyard of weapons. The young man walked among them. His footsteps echoed through the endless field. Thousands of weapons surrounded him. Yet his attention suddenly stopped on a single sword. It wasn't the largest. It wasn't the most beautiful. Yet something about it felt different. A strange pull. A strange attraction. As though the sword itself had called out to him. The young man approached. The rest of the world seemed to disappear. Only the blade remained. Half buried in the earth. Waiting. Patiently. Silently. As if it had always known he would come. The young man smiled. You should be good enough. Wrapping his hand around the hilt, he pulled. The blade emerged from the earth. For a moment, the wind stopped. The sword felt surprisingly balanced. Comfortable. Natural. Almost as though it belonged in his hands. Then, the silent roar shattered. The ground trembled. A monstrous creature burst from between the rows of buried swords. Its enormous body crushed ancient weapons beneath its feet. Crimson eyes burned with hostility. Sharp fangs glistened. The beast lunged directly toward him. Most people would have panicked. The young man merely sighed. So you're the first one coming at me? The monster roared. Its claws sliced through the air. Yet the young man remained calm. He raised the newly acquired sword. A dangerous smile appeared on his face. Let's test you a little. The atmosphere changed. Power gathered around the blade. The monster suddenly hesitated. For the first time, fear appeared in its eyes. But it was too late. The sword descended. A brilliant arc of light exploded outward. The world shook. The earth split apart. The monster froze. Then a thin line appeared across its body. The line widened. And widened. Until the creature was cleanly divided in two. Not only the monster. Everything behind it suffered the same fate. Trees collapsed. Boulders shattered. The landscape itself was carved apart. The attack stretched far beyond the horizon. The young man stared at the sword. Then nodded. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Not bad. To him, it was merely a test. Yet what he had just killed wasn't an ordinary monster. It was a raid boss. A calamity-class creature, but elsewhere in the world. A far more dangerous battle was about to begin. Deep within the infamous fourth dungeon, tension filled the air. Hundreds of players stood gathered before a gigantic dungeon gate. Weapons were checked. Potions were distributed. Final battle plans were discussed. Nobody wanted to repeat what had happened 2 weeks ago. Because 2 weeks earlier, the Silver Hood Guild had suffered a humiliating defeat. Nearly 200 elite members had challenged the dungeon's ruler. Among them were some of the strongest players in the world. Even several globally ranked players had participated. Yet none of it mattered. The boss had crushed them. Their strongest skills failed. Their formation collapsed. And they were forced to retreat. Today was different. Today the boss had respawned. Today they would try again. At least, that was the plan. Suddenly, a lone figure appeared. No one noticed where he came from. One moment the path was empty. The next, a cloaked man was calmly walking toward the raid party. His face remained hidden beneath a dark hood. His equipment was concealed beneath a long cloak. The guild members immediately became cautious. The guild leader narrowed his eyes. For a brief moment, a strange thought crossed his mind. An assassin? The stranger's presence was unnaturally difficult to detect. Even experienced rankers had failed to notice his approach. Yet the guild leader quickly dismissed the idea. No assassin would casually stroll into the middle of a raid group. Then who was he? Before anyone could investigate further, ding! A translucent blue window appeared before the stranger. Searching for player, grid. The notification flickered. A few moments later, another message appeared. Search failed. No results found. The stranger frowned slightly, then dismissed the notification. Who exactly was Grid? And why was he searching for him? Nobody knew. Then the stranger removed his hood. The surrounding players froze. Golden and crimson armor gleamed beneath the dungeon lights. The craftsmanship was unlike anything they had ever seen. Every piece looked flawless. Ancient patterns decorated the armor's surface. A long armored tail extended behind him. The equipment radiated overwhelming quality. The surrounding players could only stare. Finally, someone whispered, "That's unique armor." The statement spread throughout the crowd. Unique equipment was incredibly rare. Most players never obtained even one piece during their careers. Yet this stranger appeared to be wearing an entire set. The guild members couldn't believe their eyes. Unfortunately, not everyone was impressed. The guild commander frowned. His patience had already run thin. "What is this?" He pointed directly at the newcomer. "Kick him out." Several guild members hesitated. Something about the stranger felt unusual. But before anyone could move, the dungeon trembled. A violent shockwave swept through the area. Everyone froze. The boss had awakened. Crimson flames erupted from the ground. The temperature instantly skyrocketed. Then a terrifying roar echoed throughout the fourth dungeon. Ding! A system notification appeared. Helgao, King of Hellfire, has appeared. The players immediately turned pale. Not again. Not this monster. Not this nightmare. Then more notifications appeared. Status effect applied, fear. Status effect applied, confusion. Status effect applied, debilitation. Players staggered. Their movements became sluggish. Even elite rankers struggled beneath the pressure. Meanwhile, Helgao slowly emerged from the flames. Its enormous body towered above the raid force. Dark fire danced across its skin. Its eyes burned with hatred. The monster looked even more terrifying than before. Then another notification appeared. One nobody expected. Helgao's fire resistance reduced by 50%. Silence spread through the battlefield. The guild officers blinked. The commander frowned. What had caused that? Nobody knew. Helgao didn't care. The monster raised its gigantic reaper. Dark flames wrapped around the blade. Then it swung. Boom! The attack devastated the battlefield. The ground exploded. Players were thrown through the air. Protective barriers shattered instantly. When the dust settled, nearly half the raid force had been eliminated. The surviving players stared in horror. The nightmare had returned. The guild leader clenched his fists. Before entering the dungeon, he had raised his fire resistance to 86%. A ridiculous number. One most players could only dream of reaching. Yet even he struggled to breathe. The heat felt unbearable. Then he looked toward the mysterious stranger. And froze. The man wasn't sweating. He wasn't uncomfortable. He wasn't even affected. He stood there casually as though Helgao's flames didn't exist. The guild leader felt a chill run down his spine. How? Then the stranger started walking. Straight toward Helgao. The surviving players couldn't believe their eyes. Nobody willingly approached the King of Hellfire. Nobody. Yet the mysterious man seemed completely relaxed. Yup. A grin appeared on his face. Here we go. The guild leader's jaw dropped. For the first time,
Cax
he
appeared.
began wondering whether Helga was
Silence.
truly the strongest thing on this
Complete
battlefield.
silence. The
Then
guild
something
members
even
blinked.
stranger happened.
The
The man
man
raised his hand.
The stranger nodded
A blue
in
vortex of mana
satisfaction,
gathered above his palm.
then walked over to a patch
the
of
guild
ground near
members became
Helga
excited.
and started mining.
Finally,
Clang.
an attack.
The
A
battlefield
legendary
froze.
spell.
Clang.
A hidden skill.
The guild leader stared
Something
in
worthy of
disbelief.
this mysterious warrior.
The strongest boss monster in the
vortex
4th
grew
dungeon
larger.
stood right beside him,
And larger.
and he was mining,
And larger.
not fighting.
Then,
Mining.
a pick.
The man suddenly wiped sweat from his forehead. Ugh. Another swing. Clang. It's so damn hot. Clang. It's getting harder and harder to work these days. The surrounding players felt their brains shutting down. Work? This was work? The man continued complaining. What kind of mineral only appears when a boss respawns? Another swing. Clang. At this rate, I might have to visit a dragon's nest. Several guild members nearly fainted. A dragon's nest? One of the deadliest places in existence? He talked about it like he was discussing grocery shopping. Helga finally lost patience. The king of Hellfire roared. Its gigantic reaper descended directly onto the miner. Boom! The impact shook the entire dungeon. The guild leader sighed. Finally. The madness was over. Nobody could survive that attack. Nobody. Then the dust cleared. And the mysterious man was still mining. Completely unharmed. Clang. The guild leader nearly stopped breathing. Helga looked equally confused. The stranger glanced toward the guild leader. Then pointed behind him. Can't you do something about him? The guild leader blinked. What? The man sighed. It's already hot enough. Clang. But he's making it even worse. The entire raid force stood frozen. He wasn't annoyed by the boss. He was annoyed by the temperature. The guild leader finally snapped. How are you even standing? The stranger looked confused. Well. Clang. It's nothing special. The guild leader nearly exploded. Nothing special? The king of Hellfire had just attacked him directly. Then Helga began preparing another devastating attack. Dark flames gathered around the monster. The dungeon trembled. The guild members prepared for disaster. Meanwhile, the stranger casually pointed at his armor. A smug smile appeared on his face. Smirking face. Well. It's the item's effect. Silence. The guild members stared. The guild leader stared. Even Helga seemed offended. After everything they had witnessed. After all the suffering caused by the king of Hellfire. This mysterious man explained it all with 3 simple words. It's the item's effect. And somehow, that answer only made him even more terrifying.
And that's where we'll end part 1. A legendary blacksmith hidden from the world. A hunt already underway. And powerful warriors racing toward an unknown destiny. But the real story is only beginning. What awaits them on the battlefield? And what secrets is the legendary blacksmith hiding? Find out in part 2. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. See you in part 2.